A website that's called top10s.com rates India as the second dirtiest country on the planet. Wikipedia, in its list of 100 most polluted cities, has 29 Indian cities, 5 of which are in the top 10. Can India honestly transform into a clean country? I'm not the first to ask this question, but I'm hoping that when I'm done with this presentation, I'll leave you as optimistic as I am about the possibility of this. Why? Because there is no other option. The best time to change passed us 20 years ago. The next best time to change is now. Some of you may remember your school days where you could drink water from the tap. To expect that of our kids today is a health hazard. Will we need to breathe out of air canisters in a few years from now because regular air will just not be breathable? Municipal solid waste is one of the greatest contributors to the pollution globally. And in India, we've been struggling to find a solution too. For 10 years, companies have tried to set up different facilities to take care of this problem. But a report from the Center for Science and Environment says that 99% of these companies are lying defunct with mountains of waste behind them left in dumps. Fortunately for Goa, we seem to have found the problem. We seem to have found the solution. The waste treatment plant in Saligaon, before it started up, the same venue was exactly like this. Very similar to the waste dumps and the waste piles you've seen all over the country. A Google image shows you that grey portion, a huge mountain of a dump that was lying on top of the Saligaon plateau, just over the village, threatening the villagers to destroy them. Not only did we remediate that waste, which was over 50,000 tons lying there for 25 years being dumped by the coastal villages of North Goa, but has transformed it into something as pleasant as this. And that continues to treat the waste on a day-to-day basis. Over 100 tons of waste is treated every single day to ensure that in the last 8 months, the 10,000 odd tons of waste that would have been generated is not lying somewhere in a dump. And that's why I have hope. Let me quickly take you through the journey of how this works. So the waste that is brought to the plant is brought by the panchayat trucks. When it's brought into the plant, we first weigh the truck to ensure that we know how much of waste is coming in before it is tipped onto a tipping floor or tipping floor. A wheel loader carries it onto a conveyor, takes it into a bag opener, where each bag is opened automatically and the content is then transferred through another conveyor into what we call a size separator. The larger bits are then taken to a manual sorting line where they are then segregated into almost 15 different value recyclable fractions. The finer bits that go below the size separator are then taken into what we call an organic extruder, a big press that looks like a lemon squeezer, and removes all the pulp and all the juices out of the garbage, which is pure biodegradable material. The dry stuff comes out on a separate line, and that is again separated automatically with machines. The wet waste that you see is then taken and pumped into a huge anaerobic digester, and using I'm going to get a little technical here, thermophilic process. We extract the methane or the biogas out of this. This biogas is then scrubbed to remove the sulfur, and the pure biogas is then fed into 2 gas engines with a potential to generate 7 megawatt hours per day. Currently, the excess biogas is being flared, but we are in talks with the government of Goa to allow us to put this into the government grid so Goa can get more power. The residue from this is taken into what we call an in-vessel composter and composted to bring out compost. This is then sent through the fertilizer companies to farmers across the country to be used in their farmlands. Whatever water is remainder from this is passed through an effluent treatment plant, recycled and used back in the gardens for flow washing. What you see there is the end of the dry line, which gives us what we call as RDF, or refuse-derived fuel, and grit. The grit is then stored in a scientific landfill that's lined with HDPE, bentonite, and geotextile liners to ensure that none of the leachate gets down into the groundwater. So what comes in as a pile of dumped waste, mixed in every nature, is now converted into 6 beautiful products. You have gas that converts to electricity. You have value recyclables that can be sent to different recyclers across to be recycled again. You have compost that's, great to increase the fertility of our soil. You have RDF that goes for co-production to cement companies and avoids them from using coal. You have water, which is recycled and used back inside the plant. And some amount of grit, which again, we've got good news because the Urban Development Ministry is now saying that you can use this grit in road constructions for low load requirements. 6 components, equally distributed, no traces left behind. How beautiful is that? The story doesn't end here. Because if this is also true, and if this fairy tale is actually happening, which it is, and where is the problem? Why aren't most cities putting this up, and why aren't we just solving this with the flick of our fingers? Because let me tell you an honest truth, that this is a big part of the solution. But there is a bigger part of this solution that lies within me. It lies within you. It lies within each one of us to make a small change, to segregate. Now that seems a little contradictory to what I just said. We said we're taking mixed waste and we're making all these wonderful products out of it. Why do I want to trouble you at home? Why do I want you to segregate? In this wonderful explanation was hidden a word called RDF, refuse-derived fuel. A brilliant solution, co-processed in cement industry, leaves no traces. But let's go closer to that RDF. What's in it? Plastic, cloth, items that could have been recycled. To manufacture plastic, we have to import fossil fuel. If we could have recycled this plastic, could we not have saved that money? Is it not a national saving? One reason we must segregate. I'll give you another reason. To transport this RDF to a cement plant, Goa needs to spend close to 20,000 rupees for each truck because it's 600 kilometers and more away from Goa, the closest cement factory. Leave alone the cost of the transportation. What about the fuel that's being burnt? If we reduce this RDF, could we not make a saving? And I'll give you the third reason, which to me is the most important, is human respect. When this waste comes onto onto the first segregation point, where I said it segregates it based on size, where the bigger parts go onto a manual sorting line. And while these poor souls are there sorting away at their, along comes a carcass, because somebody did not care and threw their dead pet into the waste. Can you imagine the plight of this human being and what he has to go through? And this is in the most technologically advanced system. Imagine what happens to the rest. We seem to pride ourselves that we have abolished the caste system. Let me genuinely and honestly ask you, have we? Or have we merely changed the names? Have we merely changed Bangi and Shudra to Bhikhari and Garib? And do we still not expect that this poor, economically deprived person must clean our mess? If I threw a rupee coin into your dustbin, into your waste bin, would you be willing to put your hand there to retrieve it? If the answer is no, then why should somebody else? The good news is we have a solution that will tide us for the next 10 years before we can explain to more people that segregation at source is so very important. But we have to start today. We have to take this message out there to everyone that is there and tell them you have to segregate. Don't worry about the fact that if I segregate, my neighbor doesn't, or if I segregate, the government comes and mixes it up. It starts with the power of one. I did it. I've made a difference in my colony. I know I've made a difference in my city, and I believe each of you can take this message out there and make a difference, not just in this country, but in this world. Thank you.